Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey Podcast. I am joined today, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, my business partner, the whiskey wizard himself.
Aha!
Is that what? Wait a second. Is that what a wizard says? A wizard just says "aha," like you figured it out.
I always have Alan Partridge to the forefront of my brain, and so any introduction has me saying "aha," knowing me, knowing you, aha.
I'm Joshua Hatton, knowing me, knowing you. Oh how does he do it?
Johnson. Knowing me, Alan Partridge, knowing you, then whatever their name is. Aha!
Aha.
It's so good. Search, dear listener, spend as much time as you can trawling YouTube for Alan Partridge clips.
Oh my gosh.
Your time will be well rewarded.
Let me tell you, Jason, so this you know what, this is probably October or November where Heidi and I watched the Alan Partridge movie. I've seen it many times, but she hadn't. And she was just laughing her ass off. And I said, oh, you like that? All right, let's do this one. And then this one. And then this one. Oh.
And that's the takeaway, right? The movie is okay.
Yeah.
If you know the Alan Partridge oeuvre.
Yeah.
The movie from a couple of years ago, a few years ago, is okay. But when you go back in the archives, good grief. There's so much wonderful Alan Partridge.
Yeah, and it's
a man out of time.
Indeed. And it's just wonderful cringe comedy. Right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just on the edge of my seat, cringing, waiting for him to be stupid and say something stupid, and then he comes back in spades, even worse than I ever expected.
Talking about saying something stupid and being stupid, you and I,
oh boy,
just the other day on MLK Junior Day, you and I traveled 3.5-4 hours to a centralized meeting spot.
Yes,
a spot on the earth halfway between where we both currently reside. And on my drive home, after seeing you and, elbow, I don't even know what the movement is called, chicken winging. That makes it sound like we did something in a public lavatory. I'm not sure I would say that out loud again. But you and I, dunting elbows, if you will.
I think we should call it flip-flapping.
I'm definitely not going to say I chicken winged you the last time I saw you.
Because you go up and down like a wing does a flip-flap.
Stop. So on my journey home, I popped in our year in review podcast episode.
All right.
And the thing I've been saying to anybody who's reached out and saying to you and saying it again now is I could not have enjoyed myself more during the recording of that episode. Just, we'd made it to the end of 2020, a very, very, very tough year. And we just got to sit down, not worry about the next meeting, not worry about the next email, and just pop corks and just chat. And I have to say that in listening to it on the drive back down the road, I enjoyed listening to it almost as much as I enjoyed recording it. Obviously, on the drive back, there was no imbibing, there was no popping corks on the way back down the road. But just the conversation and the thing we've said to our dear listeners for a long, long time is the conversations that get recorded and make it into our podcast are the same conversations you and I just simply have.
Yep.
And my deep, deep concern is you and I are now so busy that we're having fewer and fewer of those types of conversations. And I really got the sense in listening back to the year in review episode that I was just so happy to have, we recorded 4 hours of material, but I was just so happy to have 4 hours to sit with you and just chat, just have one of our chats over some drams. And I was really happy to hear that came through in the recording. And so knowing, how special our listeners are, knowing how often we talk about our listeners, knowing that they get to hear genuine conversations between you and me makes me really happy with what we're doing with One Nation Under Whiskey as we have our eye on the calendar as we move towards the conclusion of our 4th season doing this.
You have perfected the art of Jewish grandmotherly guilt.
Oh boy.
By delivering...
Well, the good news is I'm not intending it, so if that counts for anything.
By delivering the news of, I had such a great time, and it was so good because we get such a short amount of time to spend together. And the hidden message behind that is, wouldn't it be nice to just get back there if only? And it's being pushed in my direction. And I'm just saying, that did not go unnoticed.
No. Let me add to that. In that case, I don't have time. Like, if you were reaching out, hey, Jason, you want to get a dram? You want to hang out on FaceTime? I'd be like, let me check the calendar. How does March look for you?
Yes.
Right?
Yep,
and so that's why I'm not just sitting here twiddling my thumbs thinking, oh, I wish Joshua Hatton would call me up for a dram. It really is a case of we're both so damn busy that I wish we could do this more. But I don't know where the time is. But that's not what I wanted to get into. What I did want to say was, of course, thank you. Enjoyed that episode. And hopefully listeners enjoyed it as well. But in terms of genuine conversations, there's a person who we know very well and another person who we know a little bit well. And we've certainly known for a good number of years.
Indeed.
And when we sit down with the inimitable Mark Watt, we just have a chat. We just have a whiskey chat with him. And I'm going to put the cart before the horse here. We sat and recorded maybe 2 hours, 2.25 hours with the Watts. Was it something like that? You remember the audio better than I do.
It was it was exactly 1 hour, 58 minutes, and about 12 seconds.
Okay. So 2 hours, right? So we had a 2 hour chat with the Watts as they were in their house in Campbeltown. You were in your office in Connecticut, and I was in my office in Virginia. And why I'm putting the cart before the horse here is when we reached the end of that time together, I had said to Kate, it's amazing that we've known each other for, what's the number? 8 years on that? 6 years on that?
Yeah.
Something in that vicinity,
6 to 8,
right?
Yep.
Right? I've never had the opportunity to just sit down and have that length of conversation with Kate.
Same.
And it was wonderful learning more about Kate and Kate's backstory. And, I know she's been very well established in the whiskey industry, getting even back to university and subject, and then coming on board with Springbank and being there at the same time as people we know and like a lot and consider friends like you and Mitchell and David Stirk, and having those kind of points of commonality. And then just seeing where she is now with Watt Whisky and Campbeltown Whisky Company. And of course, it's always wonderful to sit down with Mark. But what a real treat to get to spend that extended time with Kate for really the very first time.
It was a treat. Because, same, right? Whenever you and I are with Mark or Mark and Kate, it's always you and I. We're not separated. So like you, I did not have a chance to just sit down and talk with Kate until then. And it was lovely. And I mean, I'm saying this in a joking way, but but I really think of them as this whiskey power couple, right? It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
right? It's like M. Kate or Kate M. or I can't. But you know what I mean? It's in. I'm trying to think of other sort of whiskey power couples out there, right? Hans Offringa and Becky Offringa, right? These two people that you know as a combination, right? And their careers up until this company while in whiskey, has always been separate, and now they get to enjoy it together.
I will tell you, Matt and Karen with the Whiskey for Everyone blog, and kind of what they've built out of that.
Yep.
And the reason I got to Matt and Karen was I was thinking not of a married couple, but really a couple of chaps who are in a similar boat to us, where they've just kind of become known as a professional whiskey couple, is Neil and Joel of the old Cask Strength blog.
Yep, that's a good
kind
point.
of what they've gone on to do with their writing. And we've been talking a lot about the Water of Life movie, and there's Neil and Joel in the Water of Life movie. And so I think of them in the same way that I think of you and I. And you just said this a moment ago, when you and I hang out with people, it really is you and I. There's not a lot of one or the other of us will go to Scotland or go on business. It's really both of us. And so it's kind of weird being thought of as a professional whiskey couple. At least Kate and Mark are married.
Yeah, and there's no, benefits that I have been granted yet in this friendship.
I can't believe you would say that after being chicken winged. That's hurtful. I'm starting to think chicken winging means more to me than it does to you.
Oh, gosh. Where is that in first base, second base, third base?
Yeah, right. Yeah. All the kids are talking about it. As the kids say.
And then it just turns into an Abbott and Costello skit.
Who's on the chicken wing?
Yeah, who's on the chicken wing? Naturally. Anyway, so speaking of Mark and Kate, it was so lovely having the two of them on the podcast. Like you had said, it was a long conversation, and I barely edited any of it because it was, like you had said, it was just a lovely conversation to listen back to. I left in one or two of your ums, one or two of my ums, but what are you going to do?
I think I'm going to go over to Mark and Kate.
I think that's a wise decision. What the what? This is well, first off, welcome to the Watt family. Or two of the Watts within the Watt family.
Thank you.
The good Mark and the good Kate. And I was trying to think earlier on. Now, Kate, I know this is your second time on the podcast.
Yeah.
Though your first time without child, which is good, so you can drink with us.
Yeah, and the first time you've actually given me a microphone.
Jesus Christ. I was hoping you weren't going to bring that up on recording.
Yeah, of course I have.
How good is that? Second time on the podcast, but first time with a microphone.
Yeah, but I was really good at sharing the microphone the last time.
Yes. I hope nobody goes back to listen to that episode to see just how good you were at sharing.
I maybe said a couple of things.
Yeah.
I think you had gravity against you, Mark. Your chair kept on floating to the other side of the office.
That was a fun day.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good takeover.
And Mark, I think this now may mark your fourth time on the podcast. Yes. That is correct. But
nobody's even close to that.
I know.
I think there's been a few threes. Someone caught up with me the other week, and I was like, I need to go back again because of. Well, Broomy's been on twice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he has.
Starkey's been on twice.
Yep.
Yes, he has.
Chilton. Ollie, has he not been on 3 times?
I think he's twice.
He's twice.
Twice.
Yeah, I think you're running away with it, Mark. You're a trendsetter on One Nation Under Whiskey.
It's just you know that I'll be awake when you're doing these things, that's all.
And just think, we've given Mark a mic every time. You know, we just don't learn from our mistakes.
No, you really don't.
There was also the other one, which never got published, that we did with Gordon Dundas and Toon at Maltstock.
I was going to say, was there not a malt stock one?
Yeah.
For the record, I'm the only person who's listened to that raw audio. And
It's true.
I spent an hour
Did you
and
need
a half
therapy
in my
afterwards?
car. Oh my God. It was mental. It was absolutely mental. I was driving back from Dulles Airport to my house one Sunday morning, actually, and Joshua had sent me the raw audio and said, hey, let me know what you think. And I listened to every second, and it was absolute garbage. It was just drunken 3 a.m. ramblings at Maltstock.
And I sent it to Jason, A, not having listened to it, but B, knowing it was absolute garbage. But I hoped that he might find a nugget. You know, he might find a nugget in there. Did you find any nuggets? Was there anything, Jason?
The Sam Simmons cameo, I really appreciated that, but it didn't amount to anything. As soon as I heard Sammy at the door with a guitar, I thought, oh, this is going to take a turn for the better. And then it didn't. And, you know, he wasn't alone in that. So.
I remember Gordon and I thinking, we've nailed this.
I think I remember you coming home from Maltstock and telling me about it. Oh yeah, we did an interview for one day, so that'll be brilliant.
I do. We still have the audio. I need to listen back to it.
No, you don't.
You're welcome to share it with Mark Watt.
So
Kate, make sure you've got something on when Mark listens to that one.
Exactly.
Send them off to the gym or walk around the harbour.
It'll surprise you to hear that I have listened to Mark's drunk ramblings quite regularly. Where was it?
Normally I'm in the room.
No, there was one time I was away working and you phoned me up because you were walking home from the Highlander to Dufton. So this is about 5 miles. And it was about 4 a.m. And I think I did actually stay on the phone to him the whole time just to make sure he didn't fall in a ditch or something on the way home. I can't remember where I was.
Oh yeah, you weren't even in the country.
No, I was away, like on a tour somewhere. I was away working in a random hotel room somewhere. That was in the early days of our relationship. Nowadays, I just like turn my phone on mute when he's away.
was this?
How often do they pull people out the Campbeltown harbour?
Not that often, I don't.
Not that often. Although my brother's 21st, a man came out the sea.
A man came out the sea.
Yeah.
I like the way that's phrased. A man came out the sea.
Well,
was he a merman? No, he was a drunk Campbeltonian.
No, he wasn't local. I don't know where he came from.
That'll do it. Oh, those out-of-towners are the worst.
No, because my mum and dad's house is right next to the loch, and we were all having a basement party, and this guy appeared at the basement soaking wet, having just come out the loch. So my brother's 21st, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure, like, just come and sleep in the living room or whatever. But he very kindly like woke up my friend who was sleeping in the living room and told her to go and sleep in one of the bedrooms upstairs so that there weren't any, like, nobody else was having to sleep in the room with this random man.
So that Swamp Thing could get his head down for the night.
Yeah.
Did you have to keep him in salt water to keep his fins from drying out, or?
I don't know. Mum came down in the morning to find a naked man on the couch and a set of jeans with a screwdriver in it going round and round in the tumble dryer, which was broken, so it was still soggy. I'm sure this is going to be of great interest to the listeners of One Nation Under Whiskey.
And then when your mum woke him up, did you not just crack a tin of lager and then walk off? Or
no, she offered him a cup of tea or something. He went, lager would be good if you've got one.
Oh, that's magnificent. Campbeltown living. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. Love it.
So I
So-
was fairly sophisticated when I came on the scene.
Which, that's a statement that, there's a lot of context attached to that statement.
Mum did still need subtitles for about the first 3 years that we were together because she couldn't understand you, though.
It's okay, I've got my posh voice on.
I know.
Didn't you say that about the first episode that you recorded with us? And Josh and I, we always forget. We always go back and forth on this. Maybe the third ever episode of One Nation Under Whiskey was, fourth. Is it the third? Is it the fourth? Mark Watt says the third as well.
Well, while you
first
guys
one
are
was-
talking, I'm going to check the
Go to the
Worldwide
Google
Network.
machine.
Yeah, no, but the first one was a pilot, so it doesn't count as an actual episode.
So you're saying the first one
David
was
Stark.
episode 0?
Yeah.
Gosh, how long was
see.
the first episode? 40 minutes? With
So here we
20
go.
minutes or 17 minutes
You ready for this?
dedicated to Stark?
Oh, this is so funny. I'm looking at our website here, and the picture of us with David Stirk is upside down.
Yes, I've told you this before.
All right, so that's episode 1. Episode 2
At
was
this point, there's no point changing it.
episode 2 was Brian Davis with Lost Spirits Distillery.
Okay.
Episode 3 was a post Whiskey Jubilee Seattle event. Episode 4
Okay.
was Mark Watt.
There you go.
There you go.
Bum. We have an answer. But calling Stark the pilot, that's damning with faint praise right there.
I was actually quite
We-
annoyed listening, not annoyed, but listening to David's first episode because everything he answered, I pretty much was answering the same. So you could have just, done my episode, but with a Scottish accent, and most of the answers would have been the same.
Well, it's funny you bring that up then. You're the first Scotsman we interviewed on One Nation Under Whiskey.
There you
Well,
go.
there you go,
Look at that.
and without subtitles.
Difficult to subtitle a
and that's-
podcast, I suppose.
And this is why I bring this up. You had said that was your telephone voice on that recording.
Wow.
And you must have been exhausted by the end of it.
You just your cheeks are sore with having to enunciate.
So
Sound like a BBC newsreader.
what I'm hearing here is, Mark, not only were you the first Scotsman on the internet, way back when the internet had started, but you were the first Scotsman on the One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. Look at that. Look at that. Well done, you.
He only blazes trails.
So, all right, I need to reel us back in because we may never have a whiskey conversation if I don't. So this is now Mark's 4th time on the podcast, Kate's 2nd time on the podcast, first time with a mic, first time without baby. But you both combined your first time as business owners, as joint owners of Campbeltown Whisky Company, which
Yeah.
is the owner of Watt Whisky.
Yes.
We're very excited to have you on board. Now, I'm going to throw out a question there, which may be really general, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Because this is very recent, probably fresh in your mind. What's it like starting an independent bottling company? And what happened that maybe you didn't expect to happen?
Very briefly, and Mark will probably expand on this, it was actually a lot easier than we expected.
It was really difficult.
It was really difficult. And it took but everything went relatively kind of as planned, and it was all quite good. The unexpected thing is that we haven't killed each other yet, working together for a year now.
Yeah, just over a year.
We're still getting on. There's no divorce looming. It's been quite good.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the things that's how is actually working together with kids, working from home initially. I mean, obviously this was all before the pandemic, but it was also before we had an office premises, so we were going to be working from home, and that was a kind of, oh God, are we going to end up killing each other and falling out
Sure.
and whatever. But
I did think initially I wasn't sure how much input you would have. I thought you might like to begin with do all the nice stuff. Setting up the branding and the making things look pretty. Well, not that you can make me look pretty, but
no, I mean there's limits.
You're talented,
so
but
Yeah, the kind of branding.
and then you might like fade away. But it's been really good that like you're involved fully.
Yeah.
You're not like it is a joint business. It's not. Oh yeah, well it's mine, but you do bits and pieces.
My
so-
name's on the
Yeah.
like thing at Company's House or whatever. It's actually been really nice because I've been away from work for the last like 5 years because I pretty much stopped working when we had Zach.
Yeah.
Zach's 6.
Zach's 6. Okay, so 6 years. I mean, I was
No
doing...
one's counting 2020.
I was doing bits and pieces.
exactly.
I was doing... Yeah, it's written off. I was doing a bit of kind of like whiskey tours and tastings in Campbeltown during Malts Festival, and I was involved a bit in the Malts Festival through my Explore Campbeltown stuff. But I'd been away from the kind of circuit and away from the industry for kind of 5-6 years. So it's actually been really nice getting back and speaking to consumers again, speaking to distributors.
Realising that we're the older people on the circuit these days.
Yeah, in my head, I'm still that kind of like 20s thing. So it's a bit
Yeah.
scary when you realise that you're like the old grey-haired people that were there when we started.
Yeah, so, some of us have had that since our 20s. I don't want to wander too far away. I want to stay focused on this answer, but just for a moment, just when you talk about being away from the industry and coming back to the industry, can you tell our listeners, Kate, about your whiskey career before you went off to have Zach and then Joe?
Yeah, so I started at Springbank, which is now like literally, we live literally across the road. Straight out uni, my first real job was at Springbank Distillery. I had no idea that jobs in the whiskey industry like existed. This was the I'd studied languages at uni, and Mum had heard, as you do in small towns, that the girl that was working at Springbank was leaving because there was too much travel involved. And I was like, ooh, travel.
Hello.
And she spoke languages and whatever, so I sort of randomly phoned them up and basically said, I've got a languages degree. Are you looking for anyone in the export department? And they went, yeah, funnily enough, we are. Send us your CV. And I had an interview with Ewan Mitchell in a pub in Glasgow because I was just finishing up uni. Yep. And got the job. Because I was living in Glasgow at the time, 21, 22. I was like, I really don't want to move back to Campbeltown because I grew up here. I was like, Campbeltown, like I was wanting to go to kind of, I don't know, France or Spain or go travelling or do I really want to move back to Campbeltown? I was like, well, it's a job. I'll maybe do it for a year and a half, get some experience, and then like I can move somewhere more exciting. And actually, like I just loved it. The industry, the travelling, everything about it. I just loved the job. So I ended up staying for, I think it was 6 years, was it, at Springbank? I don't know.
Sure.
Anyway, I know.
It's your career,
Met
not
Mark.
mine.
I don't know. Whenabouts would that have been? What year were you being interviewed by you?
2002, I started at Springbank.
Okay.
Okay.
And
It's
then
only a couple of years before even he was out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good to
I
go.
think it was. I'd been there a year when Ewan left.
There you go.
So you would have been who you were working with? Starkey, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was at the time when I started at Springbank. David Stark was working at Cadenhead, so we had some good nights out in Campbeltown. Ewan Gunn had just left. David was there. Ewan Mitchell was my boss at Springbank, and then he left, and I was
Whatever became of him.
I know. And then I was on my own for a bit at Springbank doing entire world sales and marketing, which was fun. So anyway, then Mark and I got together. He was working at Duncan Taylor, I was working here. And George Grant offered me a job pretty much. So I moved up to Speyside to Glenfarclas. Again, kind of sales and marketing, mainly Europe, South America, that kind of area.
Okay.
And then after I'd moved to Speyside, Mark got a job at Cadenhead.
Just when you thought you'd escaped Campbelltown.
I know. So I must be like one of the only people that's actually moved back to Campbelltown twice.
I can only imagine the strings your mum is pulling behind the scenes.
I know, probably, actually.
I don't know what keeps happening, Kate, but we love it when you move back to the tune.
She didn't used to play tennis with one of the directors of Springbank.
Yeah, she did before I got the
job. Causation or correlation?
Yeah. But no, it was a great job. Like all the whiskey festivals, doing all the travelling, tastings. It was really great.
You did a lot of travelling with Glenfarclas.
I did a lot. I spent a lot of time in France, which was brilliant. I was probably in France like once every couple of months for like a week at a time or so. So I was over like maybe 6 weeks. Okay. 6 weeks a year in France.
Talk to us a little tiny bit about the South American market. It's a market I really know nothing about.
Yeah, I didn't know that much about it either, to be honest. I talked John Grant into letting me develop South America. Or I'd been asked to develop South America, and I managed to talk John into letting me go on a kind of
Don't say jolly.
No, I was going to say like a kind of recce market.
It's history now.
Market research trip. It was tied in with, like, the Scottish Government does this Scottish Development International trips where they kind of part fund visits to different export markets to try and help businesses open up different markets.
Okay.
So they were organising something to Brazil, which I went on to Sao Paulo, and then kind of went over. I'd got us a new distributor in Chile and one in Peru, so kind of went over up to them, and then to Argentina. We had somebody that wanted to be an importer there, so went and met them. But it was really just kind of starting up. I think that was the year before I left.
Yeah, I think it was.
So I'd kind of got the distributors in place. That was the kind of first trip over to like get staff training in place and kind of meet the distributors properly. But it was brilliant.
That's
really
amazing.
great. I mean, fantastic opportunities working for Glenfarclas and for Springbank. I mean, we met in Japan because we were both over there working.
We have that story on wax.
Well, maybe
To keep it in the recording. It's a great story. I recommend any listener who's not familiar with this story on how the two of you met to go back to the malt stock recording with Mark Watt.
Yeah.
That is a great story.
So it was after South America that you hung up your hat. You're pregnant with Zach and decided to take a break from the industry.
2014, Mark, at the time, you were
Working from home
for Cadenheads, but from Speyside. And we decided like we couldn't both do the jobs we were doing with the amount of travelling we were both doing and have a small child. It just wasn't gonna work. So we moved back to Campbeltown. I stopped work for a while. You then started working in the office for Cadenheads. And those 6 years have just passed in a blink.
Yeah.
Like, just the time has disappeared.
But it did work out all right. Like moving down here, the Cadenhead's job for me was a bit of travel, but it was nothing like I used to do at Duncan Taylor.
No.
And like when I was at Duncan Taylor, you were at Glenfarclas or Springbank, and we were both travelling a lot, which meant it worked because it wasn't one of us stuck at home whilst the other one was travelling all the time. And so you knew that, there's a couple of times we bumped into each other at airports.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Or like managed to grab a coffee together in Aberdeen as one of us was flying in and the other one was flying out.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
It was good though because we both did the same job. Like you understood that, you're away travelling a lot with work, but it's not always a jolly. It's good fun, but it's hard work as well. And you come home and you just don't want to speak to anybody because you've been speaking to people for like a week and being nice and chatty and you get home and you just don't want to speak to anybody. So fortunately, because we both did the same job, like you could come home and be like, "How was your trip?" "Yeah, fine," and like just like sit and read a book or watch the television or whatever. Whereas like, you know, my mum wanted to know
my
like
mum's the same.
both our parents. It's like, and where did you go? And where did you go to eat? And who did you see? And what were you doing? And they want the whole itinerary. And it's like, oh, just.
Yeah, I was in Binny's. Does that mean anything to you?
Yeah.
No. Well,
It's just like, how was your trip? Yeah, it was good. That's all they need to know. But no, it's like a lot of questions.
I used to get that a lot on the flight from London to Aberdeen. You know, you maybe just flown in from Tokyo or America or whatever, and you're on the last leg, and then you get some Granny Jean that's been down to visit their daughter or their granddaughter or whatever, wanted to speak to you. The whole, and you're just like, oh,
you're so done. You're so done.
yeah, like,
I always sat with my Kindle like in front of my face and just like read and didn't speak to, like didn't make eye contact with anybody.
the worst I've had on an airplane was I was watching something on my iPad and a German woman next to me started touching my iPad and said, "Are they twins?"
Oh my goodness. Thank you, madam.
I was like, well, there's the craze, but you know.
Why are you watching porn on a plane? That's what I want to know.
I know, that's in really poor taste.
It wasn't even subtitles.
Yeah, I'm always perplexed by people. I board with my AirPods or my earbuds in my ears, and then I sit down and busy myself. It's when people will talk to you despite what's in your ears. Yeah. I'm just like this. Oh, this is going to be bad today. I'm going to have to go to sleep, or just sit here for 5 hours with my eyes shut.
They'll wake you up,
which I have done.
I've been woken up from a sleep with things on. Someone asking me a question, not could you get out of the way so I can go to the toilet? Just asking me some dumb question that they could have bothered someone who had their eyes open, but nope, it was me. I want to get back.
Hashtag, we're all sharing first world problems right now.
Right?
Oh, I hate it when people are friendly. They're the worst.
I want to get back to Watt Whisky. And Kate, you remember that? Kate, you'd said something that intrigued me, where you'd said you're surprised working together as a couple. You haven't killed one another, and then now let's add on this other wrinkle where you talk about you're talking all the time. Like now, you guys from morning until night are not separated, and so. I understand that you're not divorced. You both look very happy, but I'm curious. Just do you have a clear distinction of this is how we interact when we're at work, this is how we interact when we're not working, and you just sort of wear different hats, or is it just life?
That's a good question.
I'll let you answer that.
We don't really have like. We don't have set times where we work. I mean, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I assumed you guys were working.
But
this is that tosses my whole question out the window.
I mean, the pandemic has like even more added to that because we'd got ourselves sorted with an office premises, and the idea was like, one of us would maybe be able to go into the office, the other one would be at home with Joe, Zach would be at school. It would all kind of, we could take turn about or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then with lockdown and not being able to go to the office and homeschool or whatever, it's just like everything just blurs together. So you're just kind of, have you done that? Oh no, shit, I've not done it. Right, I need to get that done. But we've ended up kind of doing different things anyway in the business.
But we'll be, because we're not strict about anything, like it's not like, right, we need to go and sit in the office from 9 to 5 just to prove that we were working. You know, if there's stuff to do, we'll get it done at some point. And we do sometimes work at 9, 10 o'clock at night when the kids are in bed.
Yeah.
But only if we have to do something. And it's different doing emails and stuff for your own business at 9, 10 o'clock at night rather than doing it for someone else. But also when you've not done anything during the day because you're like, oh, it's sunny, we'll go out.
Yeah.
You know, we'll go for a walk. And I think one of the things that's been quite good is like, well, more so when Zach was at school, like we'd maybe be out for a walk with the pram and we could just chat like random business stuff as we're pushing the pram. You've got, you know, walking along the front of the loch and you're like, oh yeah, we need to take some photos of this, or, you know, do you think we should bottle the Kalila or the Kalila, as it would appear?
Yeah.
You know, but it's not been sitting around the kitchen table and it's only work.
No,
Which-
it's been very kind of, it's all mixed in with kind of
Particularly
daily
during
life.
the pandemic, it'd be very easy because that's the only thing we've got other than, you know.
We have 2 small children.
No, but like we've got 2 small children, but it's not like we're like, all right, you were out with your friends last night. What was that? Or
No.
you know, did you watch something on the telly? Well, yeah, because I was watching it with you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's been amazingly good.
Yeah, it has been pretty good. And the other thing that's been good actually with the 2 of us being involved in the business and doing the business is like doing online tastings and Zoom tastings and things. It's actually a lot easier when the 2 of us do it and we can be almost chatting to each other rather than just kind of presenting to a screen. It feels a bit more natural, I think.
Yeah.
And it also means that when we finish, we're both there. Because that's one of the things I've found really quite depressing with the Zoom tastings of that. It's because, well, you know me, like you and Kate's the same. You do a tasting and then you finish the tasting and you go and have a few more drinks with people. Or you have a pint or you mingle afterwards. But now you finish the Zoom tasting, bloop, put the laptop down and you're like, oh, I'm at home by myself. It's it's a bit flat. Because like when you do a good tasting, you're buzzing.
Correct.
And even like a decent Zoom tasting, you're like quite, hey, and then you're like, yeah. But I think it's normally you associate the tasting's the kind of warm up part. You know, but then you go out for dinner with the shopkeeper, or you then
go out for drinks with some of the people.
Pints, or it's you end up in somebody's basement, or
Whether you want to or not, is that how that one goes?
Ball
You end
gag
up in a
included
box
or
at the
not?
base of someone's bed. It depends where in the world you're doing your tasting. Joshua and I have done it where we've concluded a Zoom tasting and then immediately called one another back, and then run off and grabbed a beer and just sat and had a beer and kind of decompressed, because there's no way I can go from a Zoom tasting in my office, shutting the laptop, across the hallway to my bed, and then lie down and go to sleep.
Got on.
Yeah.
Like,
There's just no way that's happening.
I always remember when I was young and I worked behind the bar at the Campbeltown Hotel, I would fairly soon into it, I was lock-up manager, so I finished my shift when the last guest went to bed. And we had a 24-hour hotel license, so it was brilliant, because it used to be at the stage where when people were checking in to the hotel, I would generally know what time they would go to their bed. They're like, you're a 1 o'clocker, you're a 2 o'clocker, you're 5 in the morning, but like even
Was that the mirror?
and you, sir.
no. And like quite often I'd come home. I'm still living at home with mum, and come home at 3, 4, half 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and like go and watch a bit of telly or something. And mum's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "Well, I can't just like switch straight off."
Especially not since you'd been mainlining espressos for your whole shift. It's like,
It's good fun. No, it's not like I had to drive home, so I couldn't drink.
No.
But espresso, holy moly.
So you guys you're on your second release now?
yes. Yeah, we're planning the 3rd one.
Yes.
But we have released 2 releases so far.
So I've got 2 questions for you. The first question is pointed a bit more towards Mark, and then we'll get to the second one. So question number 1 for you: having come from Cadenhead's, you had access to over 100 distilleries in stock that had been accumulating for decades, right? And now you're starting from scratch. How does selecting whiskeys for Watt Whisky differ from selecting what you did with Cadenhead, selecting for Cadenheads?
Completely different, but much easier at the same time. In a strange way. Like, working for Duncan Taylor before, they had huge stocks. Working for Cadenhead's, phenomenal stocks. You know, the quality and quantity that you had to pick from was phenomenal. And to have that now would be phenomenal, actually. It was much easier being an independent bottler with other people's money. You know, and other people's foresight with having the casks laid down before. Or as I used to joke, the fact that David Stick didn't manage to sell them. So when he was at Cadenhead's meant that we had lots of good stuff left. But it is different because there's a lot of pressure on picking your own stuff. Like, obviously, we've not got the access to Banffs and, you know, I was going to say stuff that we've bottled, so that's ridiculous. You know, Springbanks and
Glenfarclas,
and Glenfarclas and all these kind of things. You know, I mean, I had a quick squint through the Malt Whisky Yearbook when it came in, and I was looking at someone asked me a similar question. I was like, I think there's 110 different Scottish distilleries I've been involved with the bottling of over the last two companies, and now we've done 10. But it is more difficult because we don't have historic stocks to buy from. But in some ways, when I said it was easier, what I mean by that is, well, we've got nothing. It's not like we've bottled an Inchgour before. So the first time we bottled an Inchgour, it's the first time.
Yeah.
And so everything that we may not have access to the same amount of stuff, but what we do have access to is the first time we've had access to it. I know that's a kind of back to front way of saying it.
I get it, yeah.
But I mean, there was also I put a lot of pressure on myself with the releases, I think, because having worked for Duncan Taylor and Cadenhead's, and the quality of the stuff that we're releasing at Cadenhead's, you know, it's phenomenal. And you worry that people were going to expect too much from Watt Whisky.
Yeah, like maybe expect you to have access to the same
stocks. And to be honest, we've been offered, like you guys have been offered, I mean, stocks of lots of things. We've not done an Imperial or anything like you guys, but, you know, maybe someday in the future we'll be another 10, 11 years' time. But it's, you know, it's there was a little bit of a worry that people might expect too much because they would think, I'd have that access or have that thing, but we don't have 175 years of history, you know, to build up that stock portfolio or whatever. So it has been different, but in a way, it's possibly got me excited about whiskey again, which
interesting.
I've always have been excited about whiskey. I always loved whiskey, but you kind of can go through a bit of, well, we'll just have another 30-year-old something, or
I suppose because you were doing so many releases of
and you're like, oh, we've got a young one here. It's an 18-year-old, or you know,
right?
And it's kind of been quite nice to just look at things and looking through lists, and you know, some of the things we've been looking through stock lists, cask lists, and you've maybe not been that excited about it, and I've been like, oh, an Inchgour, or
I was a Manachmore because I just
Manachmore
skimmed over
2008.
that completely. It just wasn't on my radar.
But
Just had my second dram of that just now. So good. So good.
And you've actually just led right into, I was going to try and squeeze in another question before we came back to Joshua's second and give him some chance to remember what it was. Philosophically, you've released a Manachmore, you've released an Inchgour. It seems to me that the independent bottling buying community are all looking for the same things. And you mentioned one of them earlier, right? They're looking for your Ardbeg. They're looking for your Talisker. They're looking for your Lafroig. They're looking for your Macallan. And we all know that those are big, big asks. But one of the things Josh and I have always talked about is, as an independent bottler, we should be able to come to you and say, here's a distillery you've never heard of, and you're going to love it. And so you just said it a moment ago, Kate, looking over that list, where you just skim right over the top of Manachmore, there's that concern that somebody who would buy a bottle of whiskey from you may do the same thing on a shelf. Where's, and this is why it's the philosophical question, is where do you both lie on that spectrum of sexy names that grab eyeballs and standing squarely behind an unknown distillery and getting consumers to pay attention to it?
The name isn't that important. Like, it's about what's actually in the bottle. Mark's been saying this for years, but, you know, I would much rather bottle a really good whiskey from a relatively unknown distillery than bottle something, but that would sell because it was from a big name. And I think for us, it is about trying to find good drinking whiskey that we would want to buy, that we would want to share with friends, and at a price that we're comfortable with charging.
Yeah,
like
that's important.
You know, I'm sure, like you guys, we've been offered. Well, you've got a better idea of the kind of pricing and stuff, but we've been offered like Springbanks and Ardbegs and
Caperdonics.
Caperdonics, and the prices are
garbage. Yes, terrible.
Eye-watering. I mean,
and I know they would probably sell, and therefore we would make money. But at this point in our, I'm not saying never because
we might.
You might, and then I'll be a big. Yeah, there's so many things we've done that I thought I would never do. But it's at this venture, I don't think we can have an Inchgour at 60 quid a bottle next to a Caperdonic at 450 quid a bottle.
Sure.
And, you know, something else at an Ardbeg at £1,000 a bottle. You know, it probably would sell, and it may well be great whiskey, but it doesn't fit with what we're looking to do. I know other people will do it, and that's fine if people want to do that, but it's not. Even when I was at Cadenhead or at Duncan Taylor, you know, when Duncan Taylor Bowmore 66 is coming out my lugs, Caperdonic 72, you know, I think we bottled over 100 different casks of Caperdonic 72. You know, doing at Cadenheads with Bamps and Springbanks and, you know, 30-year-old Highland Parks and stuff. I championed the Balmenics and the Glen Elgins, you know. I've always been, you know, when you came to the warehouse tastings with us, it would be the Glen Talkers that I'd be like really pushing. Not pushing, because it didn't need to, but that I'd be more excited about rather than the, you know, whatever, the 30-year-old Highland Park. And the 30-year-old Highland Park is phenomenal. But
then people expect a 30-year-old Highland Park to be phenomenal. They don't necessarily expect a 15-year-old Glentalkers to be phenomenal.
Shoot.
I know, but they don't.
Absolutely.
So actually,
I think we're all in agreement there.
So actually, people are more likely to be pleasantly surprised by a 12-year-old Manachmore or a 15-year-old Glentalkers than a 30-year-old Highland Park or a 25-year-old Springbank or something because of that expectation.
Yeah. So that's our philosophy, is it? And it's also, you know,
it's just like bottled good whiskey.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter.
When you put it like that.
It doesn't matter what distillery it's from or whether we can name the distillery or not or what age it is particularly.
But if we feel the price quality ratio is fair, like, you know, I'm from the northeast of Scotland, would I spend that amount of money on the bottle? You know, I want to be able to afford to drink the whiskey that we're selling. Or more so, I want to be able to justify opening the bottles that we have and not going, oh, that's 400 quid.
And also,
I could have, fed my children with that money.
But also opening the bottles to share with our friends who don't necessarily drink whiskey.
Yeah.
So you don't feel that it's going to be totally wasted on them. Yeah, I'm mainly talking about my friends. Obviously, most of Mark's friends drink whiskey, but like quite a lot of my friends don't, and we're trying to get them into it. So if all the stuff you're bottling's in the hundreds of pounds worth, you're really not going to want to crack open one of them to give to people that aren't necessarily going to appreciate it.
When we can eventually get back to bars and entertain clients, you don't want to be going, don't buy that. No, don't take a dram of my such and such. It's too expensive. I don't want to put that on my company expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So affordability also important.
Yeah.
I think quality,
Yeah, no-
affordability, drinking whiskey.
Yeah, like good honest drinking whiskey is.
Is that
what I'd say the force is.
and that wasn't going to be my question number two. My question number two, it was different, but is that your goal? Just accessible, delicious, easy drinking whiskey? Is that your general ethos?
Yeah, I mean, easy drinking is not necessarily the right or the term I would use.
No.
Because some of it could be non-smooth. But I'm trying not to say complex or whatever. But the whiskey may not be for everyone. Being honest, it's not a whiskey, but rum. When we got rum samples, we've bottled the Traveller's rum, and we've got a Foursquare coming. Both excellent rums, and I love them. We did get samples of some Jamaican rum, which I absolutely loved. It was just proper linoleum, like a 1980s car on a hot day, with somebody spilled a bit of diesel in there as well. It's just like proper.
I hear you.
Proper, like disgustingly brilliant. And moving further along in time, we'll probably bottle those kind of things that won't necessarily be for everyone. At the minute, we've got to, but we have to be a bit more, I don't mean cautious, but the things we've started off with, like the Belize rum, was excellent. I love it. But it was more
accessible maybe than
So once we're a bit further established, we can maybe go
a bit more off-piste or a bit more niche or something with the flavour profile rather than
going crazy. I mean, I want to move into lots of things, but you're there to rein me back in.
And this gets us to my question number two, which was, here you are, you've had release number 2, you're looking at release number 3. I'm curious two things. A, your selection process, and B, exactly what you said just then. Obviously you're a new company, though both of you have names within the industry that people know and people respect and follow and so on and all of that. It's your company. It's your money. You have to be protective. You want to bottle the things you know are going to be winners. Like, here you are, release number 2, looking at release number 3. A, what's your selection process look like? And B, when do you think you'll be able to start getting off-piste a little bit and challenging your consumers?
I mean, I think we're already slightly off-piste, but more so probably in the next year.
Yeah, maybe. And when we're talking off-piste, we're not talking like majorly off-piste.
Yeah, we're not talking grappa or
No, but I guess my point is, and let me clarify here. Early on, when Jason and I started Single Cask Nation, I want to say this was 2013, 2014. We went to the Westland Distillery, and we selected. It was a 2-year-old, and it was heavily peated whiskey in a really active sherry cask. And it drank like one of the funkiest Lechigs you've ever had. And it was the first time where, right? It was the first time where we said, we're going to bottle this. And we're going to bottle this knowing there are going to be people that hate this whiskey. And we're okay with that. That's where I'm getting at.
I think we've possibly already done that.
You reckon?
Well, no, we bottled whiskey that I thought I would hate.
Yeah. If you saw it on a shelf or on someone else's price list, you'd be like, what is this rubbish?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was always against short finishes. And we've got an Orkney, if anyone said it, that has been in a port cask for 5 months, 6 months. And, like, normally I hate short port finishes. I generally don't like port finishes in general. But
I'm really not a fan either.
Neither are you. But we tried the sample and we were like, that's amazing. Get it the hell out of that port cask.
Wow.
You know, probably in previous employment, I would have said, great, leave it another 3-4 years in that port cask. Because, well, we had time to do that.
Yeah, we're not in a position at the moment
to sit on a butt or something for, 3 years.
No.
In the hope that it might turn out okay.
But you would have had that. If you in the Cadenhead's days, you would have just had that. And please correct me if I'm wrong. You would have had that on a spreadsheet that would say, Highland Park, 14 years old, 5 months in a port pipe, and you would have said, leave it in for 2-3 more years. Do you think owning your own company has you tasting things immediately because you simply need to make immediate decisions?
Well, we're tasting stuff before we buy it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it is a case of, we like that, we want to buy it, and because we're buying to bottle within the next 6 to 12 months is the kind of timescale. We're not buying to lay down yet.
No, in an ideal world, I'd like to get to the stage where we're 3-4 releases ahead of where we are. So maybe a year's worth of stock ahead. And
buying some stuff to lay down for like future.
But we're a way off that at the minute. In an ideal world, we'd be like, we buy new make every year so that by the time we retire, we might have something to bottle.
Yeah, no. Going back
Here you go, Zach.
Yeah,
Going
back to Joshua's earlier question, the selection process is really quite simple. I'm going to steal Mark's like normal chat on this. It's like, try it, we like it, we'll buy it, we'll bottle it. Is pretty much the only kind of thing we need to do is decide what we're bottling when. So we bought, what did we buy initially? 10 casks?
Yeah, I think so.
We bought 10 casks initially, and we decided, thanks to the crowdfunder actually, we were able to kind of launch with like a range of 5 casks. Like you guys know yourselves, like buying the casks is one thing, but then you've got the labelling, the bottling costs, the duty on the UK stuff, like all this stuff, which if you don't actually have cash in the bank, you can't do. So the crowdfunder went amazingly well and allowed us to launch with 5 casks rather than maybe 1 or 2.
That's rocking. That's really cool.
It was. So we had the casks bought, and then we sat down, tasted through them, and we did actually, because it was going to be our first release and because we knew that we were probably going to have quite a few months of only tasting these 5 products, we're like, we need to have a variety and we need to have stuff that works as a tasting and that works as a kind of
smart
range. So that there was a bit of thought went into.
Yeah.
I'm saying there was a bit of thought went into that. Like normally you just be like, we'll just bottle those 5 and it'll be fine. There was actually a bit of plan there.
There's always been thought in here.
And again, the second release, I think we're trying to have a bit of variety. We're trying not to repeat that. Like we did a rum in the first release, so we haven't done one in the second release. We might do the Foursquare third or fourth release.
I mean, there's a few things at the minute, depending on what casks we can actually get to. We got stuff bottled at Claxon's, what casks we can get there on time before the next release or whatever. So that might influence things a wee bit. But selection process, like we've been very fortunate. We've already bought from 6 6 different sources.
Yeah, I think so. 6 or 7.
6 or 7 different sources.
That's
and
fantastic.
we've managed to try everything we've bought before we've bought it.
It's getting harder,
It's
isn't
getting
it?
Which is
but it's
getting
good.
harder.
Yeah.
It's getting harder. And I don't
getting a
think
lot
that's going
harder.
to
That's not gonna
continue.
no, we're going to have to take a punt at some point.
Yeah.
Yep.
But at least if we're a bit further down the line, when we do take a punt, then we can afford to re-rack it if we need to, or sit on it for a bit longer, or,
Yeah.
at this stage, you don't want to take a punt on something and then realise that you're not going to be able to bottle it for
10%.
3 years.
10% of your budget is held up in that one cask. And you're
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
One cask is 10% of our budget. It's a hell of a lot more than that. Aye, percentage, not budget. But it's one of the other things we've been really lucky with, and we've been laughing with a lot of people, like, he used to always laugh when people, independent bottlers in general, will say, we try 100 samples before we pick 2 casks or whatever. I'm like, no, you don't. Or that's why your casks are so expensive, because you've spent $5,000 on samples before you've even bottled the cask. But what has been quite interesting is because we know the people we're buying from and they know us, and if they're sending us samples, they generally are having a smell through them first.
Yep.
So we've probably only rejected 10%.
Yeah, about that.
And a lot of it's we've rejected it because we like the other things better rather than
Yep.
being sent duff stuff.
Aye, it's not that there's been anything wrong with any of the stuff that we've been sent, just that
So that
we've preferred other, and we can't buy everything.
yeah,
So
and I think that's where we've been lucky with having friends in the industry.
yeah, and with having been in the industry for
Yeah,
a long
having
time.
been in this for a long time, and also a lot of the people that we're buying from know that I know what the prices should be.
I don't have a
Don't
clue.
get
I
us
mean,
started.
I don't have a
Oh,
clue. They
boy.
can send me anything, but
And I love my spreadsheets, so you just give me an RLA price and boom. See when people
Exactly.
give you a bulk price, it really does my head in. You've got to calculate another calculation.
Yeah. Or a cask price with no ABV on it.
Oh yeah, there's
Just be happy you're not dealing with American spirits where you're given proof gallons and proof rather than liters and ABV. It's a whole other system. And in the US, quite often, you're buying the casks. This is your price for the cask, period. You could taste it beforehand, but this is your price for the cask. You don't necessarily know how much is in it. That's just the price.
oh,
And
so you don't know, you don't get the regauge, or
that's
you
how
don't get an
hot
RLA price.
bourbon and rye are right now. It's a case of you get what you get and you don't get upset, and that's it.
yeah. So you've got to price it based or think on your pricing based on there's going to be huge losses. And
Yep,
then if it's
exactly.
not,
Yep.
then you're
Assumptions.
happy.
Yep. You have to make general
I think,
assumptions. Yeah.
Like when we've been running numbers and doing projections and everything, I've always been really negative.
Yeah,
Or
on the
on the
cautious or
side,
pessimistic side of what everything's going to cost.
Yeah.
rather than because I remember you guys saying to us in the podcast in January, whatever you think is going to be double it. It's there's always going to be something that's going to mess you up. Didn't realise it was going to be a pandemic, but
Right? We were right, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers any questions.
It does. I'm curious, as you're tasting away, are you looking at colour? Does colour pique your interest? Does texture pique your interest? Are there key flavour profiles that are always slam dunks or home runs for you?
Well, obviously the colour thing makes sense because of our logo and everything. I smell in colours.
But it's not necessarily the colour in the glass. It's
No.
not related to the colour of
Colour
the whiskey.
of the whiskey.
No.
Yeah.
So that transposes something to the label, but I don't care about the colour.
You should maybe explain that, because some people listening might not have heard about your
Yeah.
freakishness.
Yeah, I'd
For
love
this
to spend a
particular
moment on
feature.
this.
Yes.
So basically, when we designed the labels, so our label is a taste bud.
Yeah, the logo is a cross section of a taste bud. Is what it is.
Because obviously we're all about the taste and not about the packaging, even though we have 5 labels and a box.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on.
But it makes sense and it works really well. So our team came up with this logo and we were just like, love it. And we decided that we wanted different colours on the label, you know, just to mix it up a bit.
Mainly because quite like bright colours and a bit of variety.
And I said to Kate, well, I've always smelled in colours. And Kate, well, you can say what you thought when I said that.
Well, he'd gone on about this years ago, like, oh, that smells red. And I was like, you're just being a pretentious wanker. Like, what are you on about? But it turns out it's
Why
a
can't
thing.
you both be right?
Well, it turns out it's a thing. What's
It
it?
is called synesthesia.
Yeah.
Synesthesia, yeah.
And it was actually Dave Broom that told me about it, because I was drinking with him in a bar in Tokyo, the one where we got together. And I was saying about smelling and colours and things, and he was like, oh, that's synesthesia. And he told me about a book that's called The Frog That Croaked Blue. Brilliant book. That explains it all. It basically means you're wired up slightly wrong. Or slightly differently, rather than wrong.
We knew that anyway, but yeah.
And so basically, lots of people have it, but don't necessarily realise they have it. So when I smell, I get a flash of colour, and that's the colour that we put on the label. And this is the first time we've looked into it since we started this company, that I've looked into it to try and see if there is any correlation between the colour I smell and tasting notes. So far, I've not got enough research to do proper analysis on it. And I was so pleased, like when we did the Forte pink-coloured Orkney, I was so pleased that the smell wasn't pink, because that would have really have annoyed me. And it was, whereas the inch gour that we did, you know, light creamy, it was hot pink was the colour we got that. So that's where the colour thing comes in with our labels. And we also wanted different colours, but we didn't want to go down the regional route.
The regional colours, yeah.
Because, you know, most people do, you know, Isla's purple, Spaceside's green, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what happens is your Isla whiskey sells out, so it doesn't hit the shelf. Like, we're not going to get anything from Campbeltown much, not much from the lowlands, you know. So you've got, and then most of your bottlings will be from Speyside, because that's where they make great whiskey.
So they all be the same colour.
So your shelf sends up all the same colour. So by mixing it up, and it will be interesting once we get more bottles on board. You know, one day will we do an orange tasting of like 5 bottles that are all orange or purple or hot pink or whatever. It's
I think
bit of
it
fun.
may be quite random. I don't know that there's anything hugely, because we'd thought it was the Kalila was purple, and we're like, oh, maybe purple's like a kind of smoky, peaty Isla thing.
Yeah.
But you know, 3 or 4 other like smoky, peaty Isla things that we had in the house, and none of them were purple. So we're like, right, it's nothing that kind of obvious. So
Interesting. Yeah. Maybe it's triggered by the height of the stills. Maybe you're like 2.5 meter stills is purple.
we're
Maybe
building
you're
up.
Rain Man about stills.
Yeah.
fermentation time. No.
So at the moment, we're building up a kind of database of like not just our own stuff, but just any other whiskey that we've got lying around or in the house, and you're kind of nosing stuff and keeping a note of what colour it is.
Because I've always had it, and I've brought it up in tastings years ago when I first started, and we took me on. And actually, when we first started going together, your mum did some paintings based on tasting notes.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, wow.
She did like some abstract kind
Abstract tasting, kind of like the one that's behind us there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That's great for podcast.
It is. It's been great on the podcast. Yep. Listeners are loving that artwork.
So
It looks
really
like a pepperoni pizza in the distance for those that are curious.
and it was like Brooke Laddie 10-year-old tasting notes and Springbank 10-year-old tasting notes that she did.
Yeah, because you said what colours you got, and Mum kind of did these like little abstract kind of tasting note paintings.
And even then, you still thought it was a load of nonsense.
Yeah, a little bit.
How
But I
much
quite
was
like it
Kate's
now.
Mum just humouring you there. That's amazing. Was she
She-
your mother-in-law at that point, or she was just?
She might have been.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. She likes him. Yeah. No accounting for days, but
You know, I
she's
hear a
met
lot
him
of
now.
people
married
do.
him.
I know I did. But now I like the colour thing because I really like our labels and I like the range having like all these different colours. So going back to the question that was asked quite a long time ago after we
I
went
love
off
that
piece.
Kate remembers questions.
I know.
Fantastic.
Mark
It's really
sniffs
fantastic.
in colour and Kate remembers questions. Like,
Yeah.
my God, what a double team you both are. This is remarkable.
So probably when we're doing the cast selection, like the colour does come into it, but more the label colour because we
Yes.
don't want to bottle 5 different things that Mark smells as green in one release.
Sure.
Because we want the whole point of having different colours was to sort of stand out a bit on the shelf.
It's a unique wrinkle.
So we want like
So that's
a range
so
of.
that's why you said maybe we'll do the Foursquare release number 3. Maybe it'll be release number 4. It depends on where the colors lie.
A little bit. I mean, it's not high on the list of selection criteria, but it does
Yeah.
play a yeah.
But I think it's the selection process is very much whether you like it or not. But
You probably do have a style of whiskey that you like and will generally select, though, don't you?
yeah, I like spirit forward
Yep.
stuff. You know, I like tasting distillery character. You know, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I love a massive sherry or a blast of peat or whatever. And if you can get, you know, sherry cask and distillery character working together, it's fantastic. But you know, that's why, you know, I love mezcals and things like that are spirit
Yes.
driven. And there is a tendency you could say, oh, so you just like immature whiskey. And there's a difference between spirit driven and immature, I think. The cask has to do some work. But again, for me, and I've always said this, as an independent bottler, you're there to bottle different whiskies or rums or whatever you're doing. If you have everything tasting, if you filled everything into first fill sherry, then you've obviously got more money than
Than we do.
we do. And you'll get great whiskey from first fill sherry, it will be brilliant, but the sherry can overpower it and it can become a nice whiskey, but it's a nice sherried whiskey.
Yeah.
Is it a nice sherried Dalyoun? Is it a nice sherried Inchgower? Is it a nice sherried Manachmore? Is it a nice sherried Milton Duff? You know, if it's too much, okay, there's some things that can stand up to Glenfarclas, etc. But you're wanting to taste the nuances in the different whiskies. Otherwise, why not just vat them all together and stick them in sherry? And that's
have a big sherry.
brand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or save yourself a ton of money and just buy sherry.
Yeah.
Also wonderful.
So I think distillery character
So the character.
is what we're looking for. And
You know, like bizarrely, when I get a cask sample, when I first nose it, I'm initially looking for reasons not to bottle it.
I know what you're talking about.
Is there anything wrong with this? And it's actually quite a boring way to taste whiskey.
Yep.
It's much better when you're doing a tasting or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, I'm drinking this to enjoy it." But you're drinking it going, "Is there a reason not to bottle this?" You know, is there any faints? Is there any off notes? Is there, you know, is it young? Is it overly woody? Is it this? Is it that? And then you start looking into, is it enjoyable? Which is probably the opposite way of how your listeners will taste whiskey. You're tasting it and say, oh, is it fruity?
Exactly.
Is it this? Is it nice? Do I like it? And that's how we drink for pleasure. I'm not saying it's hard work what we do, but like you do taste for selection in a different way than you taste, you know, for enjoyment.
do you know the other thing as well that I found, because I've always worked for distilleries rather than independent bottlers, so I've not had the same amount of experience of different distilleries and loads of different cask selections as Mark. But I think there is that thing that it doesn't matter how many times you taste it, a bad whiskey's not going to become good.
Right.
But if you try a whiskey, you can try something and be like, yeah, I quite like that, I think. And then you'll come back to it and you're like, actually, do you know, that is really good. I do really like that. And it kind of grows on you. But you never try something that you think's bad or that you really don't like and then go back to it and like it.
Yeah.
I think it's like you don't try something and think, oh no, there's off notes in that, and then you go back to it and go, oh no, it's fine.
Yeah, but I've seen samples that I've not even tried because I've opened the sample bottle and went, nah.
Yep.
And just automatically rejected it.
Yep.
Which is always disappointing, but it's also quite good because you know you don't have to think about it. Yeah, it's.
But on the kind of flip side of that, like there's been two, like one in each release actually. So the Highland, nearly said it, the Highland that we did for the first release. Initially, I was like, yeah, it's all right, and as I've tasted it, and kind of every time I try it, I'm like, oh, actually, do you know, it's really grown on me. And the same with this release, it was actually the Out of Vein, because you'd tried it and you're like, oh, this is amazing, I love this. And I was kind of like, it's all right. It's kind of space out, it's fine. I don't. I think I'm much more like, because, you know, my first exposure to whiskey, or decent malt whiskey, was Springbank. So I'm much more into the kind of like...
Such a hard life you've
I know, it's terrible.
Springbank to Glenfarclas. I was working down pit. Oh.
I know.
Oh, God.
But so I'm much more used to your kind of coastal, bit more peaty, bit more kind of oily, or your big kind of sherried Speyside. And I don't have the same kind of flavour reference, or I don't have the same experience of...
I think you put yourself down a lot.
The kind of... No, but what I mean is, when I try... Like, I remember doing tastings at Cadenhead's. This was when I worked at Springbank. We would write tasting notes for the Cadenhead's releases. And you'd be going through them going, oh, it's another bloody Speyside. Oh, it's another, like, bourbon Speyside. Blah. And I know, sorry, dear. But there was a bit of that, like, Speyside fatigue.
Yeah.
When you were trying a lot of them.
Sure.
And I still, I think, have that initial, like, nah, it's a Speyside. And it's only once I actually, like, I'm not talking about Mark, because he has a lot more experience, but, like, you know, it's only once I actually take my time and go back and try it, and you're like, oh, actually, yes, you know, that is a really good whiskey, and it's got a lot going for it, and it takes me a lot longer to get into the kind of more subtle Speyside styles, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
I suppose I could say, like, I had somewhat, like, doing, when you used to drink Scottish whiskey, you know, single malt whiskey, and then you go and try 10 or 12 bourbons in a row, and you're having to write tasting notes for that. You're like, vanilla.
Get the sodas out, right?
This one's vanilla and sweet, this one's sweet and vanilla. But the more you drink of them, the more you get into the nuances.
Right.
And it's the same with anything, really.
Yeah.
You know, but it's... I just think... I the Alt and the Bane that we've done, I love it. It's just fruity, but it's gentle. So a lot of the stuff that I like is quite...
You like quite subtle stuff sometimes.
Which is bizarre, because I'm very rarely subtle. But, it's
true.
Yeah.
I think, like, when I first started drinking whiskey, like, legally and properly, I drank a lot of Lagavulin. Not that there's anything wrong with drinking Lagavulin.
There's not.
Not at all.
It's great. Although you were complaining that there's far too much Lagavulin, and you notice there's another one coming out.
I saw that. It finished in
Become
Guinness.
like buses.
I saw that and thought of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
But it shows how good their advertising is. That offer them in Guinness, and I think of Jason. But it's... I remember, like, I drank Lagavulin like it was going out of fashion. I remember one night in the Highlander Inn, I had a pint of Lagavulin 16.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was playing catch up and people just kept ordering more.
Hashtag, please drink responsibly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
this was a long time ago. This was in the olden days when it was like
you didn't
acceptable.
have to drink responsibly at all.
This was a full pint of Lagavulin 16. Okay, continue. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 18, 19, something like that. And I'd finished my shift at the Craig Hotel at 10, 11 o'clock at night and went across to the bar. And everyone that had been there had been buying me drams to put in tab for when I arrived. Because that's kind of what you do in Scotland. In local bars.
That's wonderful.
And so I arrived, and Jock had it back then. It was just a Wild West place, but brilliant. It was
Jock Shaw?
And no, not Jock Shaw.
Oh,
another
okay.
Jock.
Oh, did it? Wow, there's two
In
Jocks.
Scotland,
Okay.
there's more than just Jock Shaw. What are we talking about here?
Yeah. And do you know what? I just realised I don't know what Jock's in name is.
Anyway, Jock
Jock.
for the honky.
Jock for the Highlander. And so he poured them into a Slim Jim, and he started pouring them, and he's like, I would need to pour them into a half pint glass because there's so many of them. And there was more than a half pint, so he just then filled up a pint glass with Lagavulin. And so I remember starting around the pub with 3 pints. I had a pint of beer, a pint of Lagavulin, and a pint of water. And it was
That was responsible.
Oh yeah, so it was responsible.
Good on you.
And
Good on you, Mark.
I do remember thinking, I must phone my mum to tell her I'll not be home tonight. And it was 7 a.m. But coming back to the start of that story, was like I used to drink a lot of Lagavulin and Ardbegs and things like that, and I still love these things, but for me it's much easier to be an expert with a Lagavulin or an Ardbeg because the flavour punches you in the face.
Peat makes it easy.
That's smoky, it's peaty, it's wet rope, it's
Yep.
all these kind of things, and it's much easier to feel comfortable that you're picking out the flavours. And whereas over the years picking subtle fruity Bowmores and Rosebanks and the Ardbeg Milton Duffs and things, I think because I've been doing more of that, I probably appreciate them more. Don't get me wrong, I'll still drink. Not a pint, but I still like drinking Lagavulin 16.
Pint. He's a dad now. He would drink a half pint of Lagavulin. Hashtag.
Or at least an American pint, which is a bit smaller than an imperial pint.
a mere 16 ounces instead of 20.
Yeah.
Where were you going with that?
So I think a lot of the time I do like the subtlety, the things you've got to work a little bit more at. That possibly some people will overlook as just not bland, but like subtle. That you're like, oh, that's a nice whiskey, but when you actually sit and look at it, you're like, do you know what? Give that a wee bit of time, or let it open up. Once you've had a couple of drams out the bottle and let the bottle open up.
I think you've just described Blair Athol for me. Right?
Oh, well said.
Right?
Well said. Yeah.
It takes you a while to really appreciate it, but when you do, you're rewarded because it's an excellent dram. Yeah.
Always been a big fan of Blair Athol.
Yeah.
I had a meeting once at Blair Athol Distillery in January, and it wasn't with Blair Athol. I was meeting my Chinese importer, and it meant halfway from where he was and where I was Blair Athol Distillery. So we just thought we'd meet there. So we met in the car park and we're like, I will go into the distillery and have a look there. There was no one there at all. We walked around the visitor centre. We walked around the stills. We just walked around the whole place by ourselves going, hello. No one was there. And I was so sure, I was like, I bet you if I take a bottle off the shelf that like someone will appear. But yeah.
We were offered some Blair Athol by a broker, and the broker said, yeah, you can have it. You just can't use the name on the label. And we said, it's Blair Athol. We could put the distillery name front and centre in pink neon and nobody would know what it was. Like, why would you not use the name on it? But obviously we all understand contracts and we've explained it in the podcast enough times.
But there are things like, it's one thing if you've got a non-named Orkney or, oh, nudge, it's a Lagavulin or whatever. Not that we would do that because we've never had that kind of thing.
No.
But when you're going, do you know what? It's a Blair Athol.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like, so?
Like, who gives a fuck? Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the things that's kind of annoyed me about non-named casks these days, they used to be much cheaper.
Correct.
You used to be able to get a you can have this, you can't name it, but it'll be 20% cheaper than if you slap a name on it. And now it's getting to the stage where it's pretty much the same price as the named stuff.
There's no value there.
I wonder the same thing.
Yep.
The same thing. Yeah, it's painful. But we're all raising a point here. And I want to say something that's been kind of rumbling around in my brain. It's so interesting that we sit and ask you, and you kind of volunteered the word, like, when will you go off-piste? You've bottled a Mannock Moor. You've bottled a Linlithgow. An Inchgower.
Yeah.
You've bottled an Altabane, like, you're already so far off-piste, right? Like, we're like, when are you going to go off-piste with something really unknown? I'm sitting here, I'm drinking this Mannock Moor, and I'm absolutely head over heels in love. I think it's lovely. Absolutely phenomenal. So with that said, that's what's been rumbling around in my brain. I just wanted to say it. I wanted it on wax.
Thank you.
I think you're right, though.
Right?
Which is...
Thank you.
Again, you've got that on wax now.
Thank you.
You were right.
Play it on a loop. That'll be on the cutting room floor. Josh is in charge of post.
Jason is going to force me to have that on repeat at least 15 times.
Yeah. If anything, it might become the Easter egg.
I think it's sometimes we forget more so possibly I forget, having been in independent bottling for 20 odd years, that Mannock Moor and Altabane is off-piste.
See, when you were talking about off-piste, I'm thinking cognacs, mezcals, that's what I'm thinking for off-piste. I'm not just
single cash Negroni.
And see,
that's when I rein you in.
And see, when we were talking about off-piste, I was thinking about another style of off-piste, which was, when you throw people for a curve flavor-wise, forget the distillery. It's if you're known for doing X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z, and then all of a sudden you throw a Q in there, right? And it's just a difference in flavor. You're not known for doing this, and then all of a sudden, for me, that's off-piste. But Jason, I do see your point there. It's when you're leading with distilleries that no fucker's heard of, but at the same time you're saying you got to taste it because this whiskey is delicious. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, granted, I only have the Mannock Moor with me, and it's glorious. And this is what I've loved about independent bottlers getting into whiskey years ago is I know Gordon MacPhail, but I've never heard of this. What is this? I don't know, Glen whatever. And then you're introduced into something glorious. You're doing what an independent bottler does, opening the eyes of the consumer to something they're simply not familiar with.
And I think there's still distilleries that have benefit from that. Glenallachie. I remember selling loads of signature Glenallachie. That's always been great by independent bottlers. And, obviously Billy's went in there and put his capital letter in the middle of it.
I knew you were going to say that.
He's Billy's went in there and he's done a lot of wood management and stuff and everything. And he's good at what he does. But would Glenallachie people know it from independent bottlers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I believe there was once an official bottling for the Belgian market. And other than that, there was the bottlings that you could get
at the distilleries.
The Chivas distilleries.
Yeah, the 50 CL bottles.
But people like us knew about Glenallachie because of independent bottlers. And I think, there's lots of distilleries throughout history that have benefited from independent bottlers raising the profile.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
So in years to come, Mannock Moor is going to be huge.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. Along with Milton Duff, we mentioned Glenelgin earlier. Yeah. We just put a Glenelgin.
We tried a fantastic Glenelgin when we were doing when we got the first lot of samples in. There was this Glenelgin, and we both tried. And we're like, oh my god, that's amazing! Like, we need it, and by the time we phoned up to buy it, it was gone.
Shit!
Oh wow!
Oh, that's terrible.
Because we were still new and we hadn't. It was pre-crowdfunder, I think.
I think it was before we got the Wauger.
It was before we got the Wauger, and we were like, and then we went for it, and they were like, "That's gone."
Yeah.
I
So
want,
now, as soon as if we try something, we're like, right, on the phone or email straight away, like, yeah, we want that one.
I want to put this out there for our listeners who may not know what actually, would you guys explain to our listeners, because this is an integral part of being an independent bottler, is having a wowger. What's a wowger?
It is. So a wowger is basically authorization from HMRC, which is Revenue and Customs in the UK. It's authorization for you to hold duty suspended goods and trade in duty suspended goods. So if you're buying casks for bottling or for sale or whatever, you have to have this authorization to be able to own casks in a bonded warehouse, basically. You can't own casks if you don't have it. You can, as a private individual, if you're buying a cask for your own use, you don't need a wowger. But if you are a revenue trader is the term, but it basically means if you're buying and selling in any way, shape or form, you need to have this authorization. It says you're a fit and proper person to own duty suspended goods. I don't know how us two managed to get one.
The joke writes itself.
It does.
I'm glad you included yourself in that.
I did,
You didn't
yeah.
just throw me under the bus with that one.
Both of us. But we were very lucky that we had a good friend in the industry who kind of guided us through it a bit. And I don't know whether we were just lucky with who we got at HMRC, but...
And we were lucky that, because of the pandemic, silver lining and everything, we didn't have to do a face-to-face interview with anyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easier because for an independent bottler, you're not actually carrying out any of the process yourself. And we don't have a warehouse. We get our stuff warehoused by Claxons mainly. So none of the stuff that we're doing in Campbeltown involves the underbond stuff.
Yeah. So although technically we're the Campbeltown Whisky Company,
Yeah, we don't actually have any whiskey in Campbeltown.
and we don't do any of the bottling in Campbeltown. We select it in Campbelltown.
We do.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, so you have to, it's basically a lot of paperwork and jumping through a lot of hoops and like, well, you guys know as well, it's like business plans and letters of intent and, you know, all
It's not
sorts of
easy.
stuff.
I mean, for you guys, it was easier, but it's not easy.
It was, it takes a while. I mean, it didn't take us that long, but
No, it did not.
Sorry.
But we're not going to comment on that, Kate.
no.
Let's focus on what what unites us, not divides us.
But that part of the business, like when we started or when we decided to start our own business, we're like, right, we know about the cask selection bit, or certainly Mark knows about the cask selection bit. That's okay. Mark had all the contacts with the brokers. Like we had access to stock, so that bit wasn't an issue. And they're like, we both have long-standing relationships with distributors in a lot of different countries. We know a lot of retailers. We know a lot of consumers. Like that side of it's okay. Like, how on earth do you do that middle bit? Like actually getting it from the cask to the bottle and then out, because, you know, we never had to do that stuff before. There was like a whole team at Glenfarclas that did all the like bottling and shipping and logistics or whatever. You know,
Cadenhead.
I had nothing to do with the cask selection. It was just like, right, this is what you've got to sell.
Cadenhead's Jenna just made everything happen.
Yeah, you chose the stuff and then you went, yeah, this is what I want to bottle, and other people like... You know, magic. It just happened.
Well, even the world of dry goods, you're now in a world with cartons in it, right?
Exactly.
You got to have them designed. You got to have them produced. You have to have them stored. You have to have them ready to go when you make a bottling. It's just another wrinkle that's not necessarily liquid related, but
so it was all that. It was, you know, you have to have this wowger to be able to own casks. To own casks, you have to have a VAT number. So we had to get VAT registered. Like,
we're
all
now
this,
having to make VAT digital and do online.
Yeah, so there's all this stuff that we're like, you know, first year we're not going to be over the VAT threshold, but because we want to own casks, it's like, right, you need to be VAT registered. We had to do all that stuff, and then we're like, right, logistics, like dealing with transport companies to get stuff from the Claxons in the middle of nowhere to us at the end of nowhere, and like getting it actually out the country. It was just like
daunting. Yeah.
Like, I found it. Well, it's probably been very good that you. It is very good that you're involved in the company, Gail.
Yeah, because you've left me doing all the logistics.
Yep. Poor Jess. That's you can lament with Jess anytime you want.
Yeah.
But I'm not good with people. Like, well,
no,
no.
it sounds ridiculous, but
Like, if a courier company doesn't pick something up and they don't tell us, I will lose the head. And,
Interesting.
You know,
what you mean is I'm a bit more diplomatic.
Yeah, that's
and when there is only 2 courier companies that will collect in Campbeltown, you can't afford to.
You can't fall out with them, really.
And so, like, I've had to learn, and to be honest, I learned a lot when I came to Campbeltown. When I joined Cadenhead's, my tolerance level for. What am I trying to say here?
I don't know. You need to be careful. You don't know who's listening.
No, I don't. What I mean is, like,
you had to become more relaxed.
I had to become more relaxed. The pace of life, everything's
slower.
Yeah.
Everything takes longer.
But I was working for a bigger company, a established company. They had ways of doing things or whatever. Whereas, no offense to Duncan Taylor, but when I was there, things were much more bang, 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 get it bottled, get it out, boom. I mean, still bottling great whiskies or whatever, but, it was a bit more
immediate.
I don't mean pressure.
It's definitely, but Campbeltown definitely has its own kind of pace of life, which is a bit slower than.
Well, which is remarkable to think about, because we talk about moving at the pace of Scotland. And now you're talking about moving at the pace of Campbeltown,
and that's what I was going to ask. There's Scotland slow, and then there's Islay slow, and then there's Campbeltown slow. Out of the 3, which is the slowest?
I would imagine Islay and Campbeltown are fairly similar in kind of time scales.
I remember
stuff.
when I joined Cadenhead's, we did. I was drinking with your mum one night, and we calculated out the amount of hours that I worked different. So from Duncan Taylor to moving to Cadenhead's, technically I worked 2 months a year less because of the amount of hours less.
Oh, okay.
That I was doing.
Yep.
Because Cadenhead's it was 9 to 5.
9 to 5, and you get the odd, but it was great. And now. Probably work 2 months a year. Yeah. It's. I mean, we're always technically working, but it's been brilliant to be able to do that, like to go and pick the kids up from school. Look at Joe's not at school yet, obviously.
But like you say, it doesn't feel like work when we're out walking with the pram and just chatting through plans or.
Yeah. Well, have you been in touch with Belgium, or have you done this? Or it's mainly Kate.
Are you familiar with the American expression "work smarter, not harder"? That's what what you're describing right now. Is working smarter.
Yeah,
I think we're probably probably much more efficient because there's only the 2 of us.
Yeah.
And so if a decision needs to be made, we can make it immediately. We don't have to go, this is what I want to do, but I actually probably need to go and check. Or, I would say that. But one of the biggest problems of owning your own company is you can't blame someone else.
Yeah, you can't blame the boss.
Because like normally you would say, if it was up to me, I would do that. No problem. I would give you that cask of Ardbeg, not a problem.
Yeah, no problem. I would definitely come and do that show, but the boss says no. And now we can't do that.
No.
I mean, at the minute, like everything's the fault of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Or small children, but.
I've tried saying, I'd love to do this, but Jason says no. It doesn't. When you're a twosome, it's not so easy to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't work, does it?
It's not to say either one of us hasn't tried, though. And, maybe given any way your meetings go of a day, maybe one of you will try that on somebody as well.
I'm sure we probably will. Yeah. Although most of the distributor, it is you that deals with most of the distributors at the minute.
Yeah.
Mostly.
I mean, you're involved.
I say most of the distributors. It sounds like we've got loads of them.
Yeah,
like we've got 4.
I was going to ask that question, earlier on in this conversation, you were both talking about traveling so much and going to so many different countries and working so diligently, even on new continents. But in launching Watt Whisky, here you are with the 4 countries. Do you want to reiterate the countries for our listeners and then go into why those are the 4 and what the plans might be?
There's technically 5. Like 5. if you count the UK as well.
Yeah, I think you should.
Then we've got the UK.
You're definitely in the UK.
So UK, and then Belgium, Denmark, Japan, Taiwan.
Okay.
It sounds quite a random selection. To be fair, it's not hugely logical, maybe, but the thinking was it is huge. I know, but to outsiders listening, it doesn't necessarily sound.
To those listening, it might sound a little random.
What we decided when we launched, it would be really easy for us to be like, right, we know distributors in all these markets. We're going to say, yeah, we're going to launch Watt Whisky's available in 20 different markets. But because what we're doing is all single cask, if you then split a single cask between 20 markets, they've got 10 bottles each,
which is nothing.
And we wanted our partners and our distributors to actually be able to get behind the brand and work with it properly.
I think the fact you used the word partners there sums it up. It's people that we want to work with.
Yeah, and it is. It's a long-term relationship. Everybody that we're working with. I mean, I think Taiwan's the most recent relationship, is it?
It's 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean. They're the most recent one.
Yeah.
Well, technically, the UK, actually. Technically, the Whisky Exchange. No, because I worked with Seconded at Springbank.
Yeah.
So when I started at Springbank in 2002, Seconded was one of my main UK customers, so I was on the phone to him all the time.
He was fairly new.
He was fairly new at that time to the
years last year,
kind of distribution. Yeah,
right.
That was a great episode. If you want to go back to any episode, it's
really.
Cheers! We were really proud of that one. Mostly because we said almost nothing in it, and he just talked the entire time.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The people that we have got to distribute our staff are people that we've known personally for 15, 20 years. Like I say, Taiwan's probably the most recent, and you've known them for 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't know the Taiwanese distributors. That's the only one really that I don't know personally.
We had a Hogmanay with our Danish importer.
Yeah,
the
Lars at Lego. Again, he wasn't one of my distributors, but because Mark and I were together, and we had a really nice Hogmanay with Lars, and memorable.
Yes, very memorable.
They hadn't booked a table for us, so we ended up having a private dining room in the hotel for Hogmanay. Anyway, so going back to my point, which was it would have been very easy to go to lots of different markets, but we decided to stick to a smaller amount, do them properly. The other side, there's only 2 of us. We have 2 kids. We can't do a huge amount of travelling. So if we've got 4 markets, or 5 including the UK, we can do a market visit to each of them at least once a year. We can go and visit them in normal times, not just now, but it allows us to kind of service and develop the markets properly.
And if we need other markets, then there are options.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to expand or we decide to start doing...
Or things don't sell enough through those 5.
Yeah. Then there are other markets we could expand into if we wanted to. So in that, we're very fortunate, and I think that's one of the differences between us and maybe other people setting up an independent bottlers from scratch. if you don't have that route to market, then it makes everything a lot harder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Japan, say, like we both know the importers, and they've just celebrated their 20th anniversary whiskey.
Yes, I suppose a lot of the people that we've been working with them for most of the life of their company as well.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
Like in one itinerary, what do you call it? One
iteration.
That's the one. Thank you.
Kate's so good with languages.
No.
I'm just doing my best to just earn like one little bit of respect in her eyes.
I like how she looked at me like that.
Yeah, and
I knew I had to roll up my sleeves at that point.
The nectar in Belgium, you started
as soon as they started the
company.
As
soon as they started the company, you started with him, with Duncan Taylor. So there is that long relationship, which again has been a huge benefit just now. We haven't been able to go and visit any of our distributors in person, but because that relationship's already there.
And also the relationship with their customers.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we know a lot of the retailers and stuff. So that's been a huge help, actually.
Well,
particularly with world events being as they are.
The global shit show, as we like to call it. But I think that was one of the things that we were talking about last January, and I'll put it on wax right now. I'm looking forward to our January 2022 interview, just to see how things have gone over another 12 months with you. But I think that was one of the things we were saying back last January when we were together in Glasgow with Jess, which was, you guys have got 2 decades at this. Like, you're coming in as such wonderfully known commodities and well-respected whiskey individuals that to have now, looking backwards, seen you hit the ground running was absolutely well-deserved and well-earned over many years. Not to suggest that Mark Watt is older than either Joshua or myself. I think you're the youngest in the...
I mean, he might look it.
I know, he's the youngest in the bloody conversation.
I had a hard paper.
He's still 39.
Yeah.
He's been 39 for the past year and a half. So we'll
he
see.
delivered in Campbeltown while living next to Macallan. It was a remarkable achievement for a paper round. Absolutely remarkable.
Yeah. And I mean, you might stay 39 for 2 years because you might actually have to have 2 lockdown birthdays.
It's possible. I actually have your present. See through this door here. Another, this is a great visual for our listeners as well. Through this door here, I have your birthday present on the other side of that door. So I'm waiting to deliver that to you in person as well.
We might get maybe like a 45th party.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'll still have to, but it probably means I need to work an extra 2 years before I can retire. But it's, but no, like when you say about that, like sometimes we do forget that we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Because I kind of think, oh jeez, I still sometimes think I'm the new boy of the industry.
Wow. Yeah.
But then there's also,
This doesn't make sense to me.
we started in the industry with, Frank McCarty's, Jim McEwen's. They were probably our age-ish.
Nah, they were a bit older, but not much, actually.
Frank's 66 or something like that. No,
He's 76.
76.
There you go. There's a bonus decade for you.
Yeah. No, they were probably, about 10 years older than us when we started. And they were the industry veterans.
Right.
So you're like, oh, actually.
Yeah.
Seemed ancient.
And so we still kind of, we obviously will always look up to these people. And, so it's, I don't know, you still kind of feel, oh, you're new. Which is good, in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's plenty to be learning. Listen, as always, we could sit and talk to you for forever. But we got to get out of here on this with the interest of time and, whatever time it is in Campbeltown, 1965, and whatever time it is here in Virginia.
Great year for local barley.
1855 in Virginia. One of the questions that we always like to get out on, and I think this might be a more difficult time to be asking this question. In 2020, when we asked this question, people would go, God, I hope 2021's better. Now we're in it. We're not starting particularly strong. What are you most excited about as you look into your crystal ball, as you look into 2021 and beyond? And obviously, you're such a brand new company. I'm sure there's a lot of things that are exciting every single day. But what's got your interest going forward this year? Mark looks at Kate. Kate looks at the corner of the room.
I'm looking at the ceiling. I was thinking.
Wait, I'm supposed to be excited for something? Wait a second.
I'm looking forward to schools going back.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to having the first... Oh, no, we've had a dram of Watt Whisky in a pub, actually.
Yeah.
Haven't we? I'm looking forward to doing our first actual live whiskey show.
Or tasting.
Or tasting, like an actual in-person
Yep.
With
event
humans?
with our own
With
whiskies.
humans in the same room.
With real humans in the same room, I think that would... And getting kind of immediate feedback on your whiskies. Whether that's this year or next year, I have no idea. But I'm very much looking forward to actually getting to speak to real 3D people about our whiskey. And also, like, fourth release.
For me, trying to nail down third, fourth, fifth, just always looking for new things.
We've got some good stuff coming up, though.
We do have some good stuff going, and we sometimes forget that. Like, we times you're like, oh, we've got nothing. Jeez, you know, and then you're like I was looking, like, we just 20, like, if you include the electric coo stuff, you know, we've done 17 casks in the first year.
That's insane.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and
he's busy telling everybody, oh, yeah, we're starting small.
Unbelievable.
yeah, but I mean, we're only looking to hopefully do maybe 20 to 25-ish casks in 2021. And I think, you know, getting stock nailed down for the next couple of releases, I'm quite excited about. Trying to get some new samples. There's allegedly more samples coming, and it's like, it was always nice getting samples when I worked for other companies, but it's much more exciting now. It's a bit more daunting when you get a sample and you're like, if I pull the trigger on this, that's our money.
Yep.
You know, but it's just going to be, well, what I really, really would like to see is be in a bar and see people drinking our whiskey without us having to buy it for them.
We might need to wait a while for that.
You know, but like, you know, or just, you know, like, to see. I mean, we've been very lucky with people showing their bottles on Facebook and social media and stuff, and that's been great. But just to have someone ordering one of your drams in a bar when you're there, but they're not buying it because you're there, if that makes sense.
So what was the bar that you did see people? Did you see them drinking it, or you were drinking it with them?
Well, no, I was in the Highlander Inn in Craigellachie.
Oh, okay.
I was up pre one of the lockdowns.
It was over the summer, I think, when everything was a bit more relaxed.
And it was the day before things went back into lockdown again.
Yeah, it was.
And I was up delivering my mum home from Campbeltown. So I took her home to Campbeltown and went to the Highlander with my mates because the Highlander was opening. And we were sat having a few drams or whatever. And we'd given... there's bars in Scotland called the Independent Bars of Scotland.
Yes, indeed.
So we gave each of them a bottle of our crowdfunding, the Orkney. So look, this COVID situation sucks. It's a tiny bit of support, but here's a bottle, sell it by the dram, you know, and keep all the money.
That was when the bars were allowed to be open.
Yeah, right.
Now they're not.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the day after they all arrived, the bars haven't opened since. So we were in there, and then Tatsuya came downstairs and was on his. And he went upstairs, got the bottle, and poured me and my mate and himself a dram of our own.
Wonderful,
just,
wonderful.
Like, it was a shame you weren't there, but it was just so fitting. You know, Highlander Inn, where I learnt to drink. You know, I've been going to that pub since I was 8 years old,
Wow.
And,
Not drinking at 8 years old.
No, not drinking. No.
Hashtag.
Yeah.
No, like, well, my big brother's 10 years older than me. So, like, he was 18, I was 8. So, like, he would pick me up from Sunday school and then we'd go for a pint. And, you know, so I've been going there for a long time. And, you know, when I first got into whiskey, I was drinking in there a lot. And, you know, so for me to have the first dram of our whiskey that I haven't poured myself.
Yeah, in that bar.
In that bar from Tatsuya.
That's special, man.
That was,
Yep.
that was
Yep.
pretty
Yeah.
special.
That's wonderful. Oh, I think
But yeah.
that's a perfect place to stop. Not that I like stopping, but it's a perfect spot. Thanks again to Kate and Mark for making time for us over Zoom.
Indeed.
And boy, I tell you, we were blessed with good Campbeltown internet that night. That was a virtually flawless conversation, which the very first time we interviewed Mark, we were not blessed with the same quality of internet, but it was also several years ago and it was during the day. So I think evening interview helped us out this time.
Well, I think, too, that the entire country of Scotland recognized that Dufton's first child to be on the internet was once again on the internet again. And it made a mistake giving him poor service for our fourth episode and decided to make up for lost time this time around.
It was like a parting of the internet waves, if you could imagine such a thing. I will also add, it's amazing what happens when you give Kate Watt her own mic. It's amazing what you learn from her. We made that error in January of 2020 when we had that wonderful takeover episode with Mark and Jess and Kate. This was a very different experience with the wonderful Kate Watt.
Well, now we know.
It was just such a treat.
Listen, now we know. We still just take the one mic, but we give it to Kate instead of Mark. It's very simple.
Mark might sign off on that. He's a good lad. He's a very good lad. So with our interview in the books,
Yep.
we should probably wake up the paperboy.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! Life story of Playboy Penny! Extra, extra! Extra, extra! Read all about it! Me and that Playboy in trouble again!
I know we got a bit of news. Would you like to present, or shall I present?
Well, I was hoping that I could introduce the segment so that I could hand it off to you.
Oh, gosh, look at that. All right. Oh, did you just hand it off to me? Is that what just happened right now? Okay.
I just handed it off to you. We're playing a little game of hot potato with the news right now.
Right. Well, you know, I say we get the most difficult news out of the way first, right? This past week, you and I, the day before Inauguration Day, and we're not even that smart to do this, but the day before Inauguration Day here in the U.S., we launched a 46-year-old whiskey. And it was a 46-year-old from Invergordon, 153 bottles, about $300 a piece, $295 I think was the number. And it sold out in 2 minutes. Which
It did.
Which,
It did.
yes, right? And now, I don't want to focus on us being surprised about this because the fact of the matter is we were, in fact, surprised that people would be clamoring for single grain Scotch whiskey, a category that has been neglected for nigh on many decades. But it's happened. And rather than us focus on our surprise of this new development, what you and I did immediately is we reached out to our brokers and said, what do you have in older grain that is going to give us some more bottles, a.k.a. sherry butts, and also bourbon hogsheads, right? Maybe we could get a couple
And that's
bourbon.
the thing. Yeah, even hoggies would be a good start.
Right? And if we had to, marry them together. So just as we did those 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe even 4 years ago now, when we discovered we had to start putting wild turkey on lottery, right? We sold out whiskey very quickly, and we came up with a solution. We will continue doing that for the bourbons and for the ryes when we release those. But what we're aiming to do, and because we can do this with Scottish whiskies a bit more easily than we can with American whiskies, is we're going to start looking for larger casks or sister casks that, if married together, are greater than the sum of their parts, to try to meet the ever-growing demand of our whiskeys.
Yeah, and for those who are not in the US, who are listening to you talking about this release the day before Inauguration Day, it was a 46-year-old grain that we launched the day before the inauguration of the United States' 46th president. And it was purely a coincidence. We're not going to try and claim any level of, being smart. The election was only November 3rd. We could not have worked out how to get the 46 whiskey here for the 46th president. But the other thing that comes to mind as you talk about inauguration and you talk about presidents and you talk about lotteries being fair, but being a pain in the derriere. It was John F. Kennedy who said, "Nothing worth doing is ever easy." And the one thing that we do by and for members of our nation is we do the right thing.
Correct.
And in this case, for any future cask under 200 bottles, it will be lottery, regardless of its origin. And that'll be a big step forward. But importantly, as you rightly say, Joshua, it's looking for larger casks or combinations of casks. And another thing, and I know we've been talking about the cask pick program, is one of the goals and aspirations for me with that program is getting single cask exclusives into retail stores, where some of the excitement that surrounds single cask nation picks can be passed on to retailers.
Yeah.
And those consumers, those nation members, those beloved fans of the nation will have many opportunities to pull wonderful single casks at wonderful prices from retailers. That's going to be important moving forward so that it's not all moving through the single online channel.
That's very good. Thank you for bringing that up. What else do we have? I know I've got one thing in mind. I know you had something.
Let me just throw this in
ahead.
real quick. Yeah, real quick before I send it back over to you. As we are talking about this 46-year-old grain, on the stroke of noon, 400 people put 150 bottles into their carts. And so Single Cask Nation Online is moving so quickly, so very quickly. But as we've encouraged people to sign up, wherever you are on the globe, we've encouraged you to sign up for the State of the Nation. And in the January State of the Nation, we posted a photo of samples of our first Kilchoman and our first Arran. And we put in a note that said, this 4-year-old Kilchoman single cask that was $95 a bottle took 22 months to sell out.
That's crazy.
And so in the course of 10 years, because we've said it early and we're going to say it often, and I'm so proud of this statement, we are in our 10th anniversary year of Single Cask Nation.
Mazel tov.
In Mazel indeed, in those 10 years, look at that. We've gone from selling a 4-year-old $95 Kilchoman over 22 months to selling a 46-year-old $300 grain in 2 minutes. And I know for people who come to the nation now or recently or in the last couple of years, you and I, and we didn't want to belabor the point of being surprised, but every time is getting used to the new normal for us.
Yeah.
It was bourbon. Well, that makes sense. Bourbon's kind of crazy right now. It's Arran. That doesn't make sense, but brilliant. Our nation is absolutely wonderful. It's a 46-year-old grain. Okay, we've been talking about the powers of old grain and how affordable they are. Oh, okay. And it's milk and honey. It's an Israeli single malt, which when these next casks come in, we're looking at smaller outturns because their angel share is so high. You know, given that we've sold those out in 2 minutes and 4 minutes, I'm guessing, you know, the milk and honey is going to be on lottery. So please understand that when we talk about this new normal, there is still a bit of getting used to this because we had so many years of being patient and having turnarounds and having pre-sales and it's exciting, but it's a lot for us to get our head around.
And for those of you that, you know, have frustrations and share frustrations that will put whiskeys online and they sell out lickety-split, I think it's very important to remember that our cask selection process for the whiskeys we put online is the very same process for the whiskeys we put in retail.
That's a fantastic point.
Right? So you're not buying a lesser product from the whiskeys that you'll find in your local retailer. It's just different products. It's different casks. And you can go to winesearcher.com or some of these other websites and you will find many of our whiskeys still sitting on store shelves. Look around. You'll find some that can maybe ship to your location. And with this in mind, I want to bring in the next bit of news, which is our next retail releases.
Yep, absolutely.
So we've just solidified our third release for UK, Europe, rest of the world.
And by solidified, we mean it exists on paper.
Right. It exists on paper, meaning we will get it into the bottling schedule and it'll soon be released. But right now, all of the whiskey is in our casks, sitting in our warehouse at the bottling hall. That's where it sits. But we know what we're bottling. We know what's going to be out. We'll be sharing that shortly. Mm-hmm. And then as far as the U.S. retail release goes, as we mentioned in a previous episode, we brought in sort of a half release just at the very beginning of 2021. And there was 2 bottlings, a 27-year-old Strathclyde single grain and then a 11-year-old Teoninich. And that we called release 6.5, right? Because it was a short or a smaller release. And we are...
Well, and it included a couple of store exclusives for those who want to go. And I say a couple of store exclusives. There was a store exclusive, Roma to Canardmore, which I think we said in the last podcast, we're going to be placing our order for those bottles. And as consumers, and there was a distributor exclusive in California.
Correct. And then just a few weeks before that, there was another Connecticut shop exclusive. So that when we think about releases, we think of 5 to 6 casks all coming in at the same time, all for a singular purpose, where you're right. This was a slightly larger release. It was just, rather than a rifle shot, more of a shotgun spray, if you will.
There's an interesting image.
Well, you're welcome. So what I want to say is we are circling in on what will be our 7th release for the U.S. We're just trying to fill a couple holes, but we're looking at about 6 casks of really lovely whiskey and maybe even a cheeky wee rum in there as well. So it's going to be exciting. I'm really excited for what we have in our warehouse now. It's just putting it together and bringing it in.
Yeah, the thing, I would say the reality for us here is we don't want to bring in whiskey the day before the tariffs end. But on the flip side, we don't want to be caught short not bringing in any whiskey when the tariffs continue to exist. Yeah. And so there was a little bit of, okay, November 3rd, There was a little bit of, okay, January 20, November 3rd was the election, January 20 was the inauguration. And now there's, we just had an email the other day from the Scotch Whisky Association saying it looks like the tariffs might be with us, best case scenario, until March. And so that gives us that sense of, okay, we're just going to press ahead and bring in the bottles, but know that the 25% tariffs are doing damage. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, I was really encouraged just a little bit before Christmas time last year. There was a letter that came out from the SWA that said it looks as if there may be a fix to this tariff situation before the end of 2020. And unfortunately, the previous administration just punted the decision down the road, as you would expect any administration. I'm not trying to get political here, but this is what happens when you have administration changes. Decisions can and do often get punted. So here we are, and like you had said, potentially we'll see them go away in March. We'll see. Are we going to wait to release these until March? Well, who knows? It takes 2 months on water to bring the whiskeys over. I think we're going to just take a chance and hope for the best.
Yeah, so let's get out of here in some really, really wonderful news. By the time this episode goes live, our 24-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon will have been shipping for a couple of weeks. And for those who have been so patient since early to mid-November when the sale happened, I have loved sending out the updates, letting those buyers know what the process had looked like. We have shared photos of our delivery van being filled. We have shown Whiskey and Donuts submitted a great photo the other day of the bottle. Our bottling hall submitted photos to us both of the bottle as a finished product and on the bottling line, which was wonderful. Our shipper has been sharing photos of what some of the materials have looked like. It has been a ton of fun. And you and I said when we launched that bourbon, we were kind of launching this as a little bit of a Kickstarter-looking thing. And I know in participating in Kickstarters, I've always loved the updates. I've always loved the little peek behind the curtain. I've always loved, and I know it flies in the face of the well-known saying, but I've always loved seeing the sausage being made, And the fact that we're trying to ship just under 1,200, because we know there was a little bit of breakage in transit, but shipping almost 1,200 bottles is a timely endeavor. And so we continue to update those bourbon purchasers. If you are one of our people out in the rest of the world, if you're in Sweden, if you're in Germany, soon to be if you're in Israel, if you're in Japan, you'll actually see some of these on store shelves. And please, Joshua, take the birch to me. The UK has been selling this for 4 weeks.
For 4 weeks.
Almost 4 weeks.
And as soon as the shops put them online, they sell out immediately. Just
Boom,
like that.
Gone.
Yep.
Yeah, the response to this project has been absolutely brilliant.
And there have been many bloggers out there who've been posting their notes on it, giving it incredible scores. We're really grateful. We've been proud of this selection. We're just happy that reviewers see in this whiskey what we saw in the whiskey. It's just damn fine, man.
Yeah, and as always, just as I'm talking about updates and peeks behind the curtain and seeing how the sausage is made, with our dear listeners listening to this conversation in their ears, in their shell-like things on the side of their heads, I'm willing to go on record, if I haven't already, and I might have already, but this is one of those releases where you firmly believed in the power of this release.
Yes.
And I'm quite proud of my role in the company. I am COO, I'm Chief Operating Officer here. I like putting on my nervous Nelly pants. And I like being able to say to you, are you sure? Are you sure? And putting together 1,500 bottles of this was a moment when I got to say to you, are you sure? And you absolutely did. You firmly believed in it. And as we've done in the history of our company, I've put my faith in you plenty of times. This was one of those times, and if to speak candidly, if this had gone wrong, this would have been a very expensive mistake that could have set us back a couple of years.
Big time.
A few years.
No,
okay.
Listen. It would have set us back. I don't know if it set us back for years, but it would have
into the dark ages.
Yeah, I think you're being a bit dramatic now, but I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
I was shaking in my boots. There's no doubt about it. Like, I believed in the whiskey. I thought that the whiskey was drop dead gorgeous, and I thought other people would see that in it as well. However, we've never sold a bourbon for that price. It was below 50% alcohol, which for many bourbon nerds, that's a bad place to be in, right? You want to be BIB at least, and this wasn't that. And so that had me a bit nervous, but I said, I think the price is really good. And Mo did an amazing job with the label.
She did, 100%.
And you know what? I said our nation members have been supporting us, and I believe in our nation members. Not saying this that I or we take them for granted. We definitely do not. But I thinking of how they buy, I thought that this would just work for them.
Well, and when you say faith in the nation members, we're talking global now.
Correct.
And we're talking about the responsibility that Jess undertook here to take on 300 of these for her markets. Mm-hmm. And she believed in this going to Sweden. And she believed in this going to Germany. And she believed in this, doing well in the UK. And so we really are, and this is a wonderful development that I'm thoroughly enjoying, is all three of us firmly believe in the strength of the global nation.
Correct.
And gosh, what a place to be that is. And I know we've got wonderful listeners in Australia and New Zealand and Denmark and Spain and Taiwan and Singapore and further afield, Canada, for crying out loud. We want to come and see you in those markets as well, but please be patient. We continue to expand, and gosh, is Jess doing just terrific work in that regard. So
there you go.
It's such an exciting time, and listening. I said this earlier in the episode, and listening back to our end of year, I can hear how our conversations come across in podcast. And I know right now my enthusiasm and my excitement is coming across in this podcast for this global expansion of our brand. It's remarkable. Unbelievable.
If I weren't equally excited, Jason, I'd tell you to calm the fuck down. So
I was going to say, you seem a little lo-fi, but that's just how Joshua rolls. So. Yeah. Listen, we're not going to do an email today. We are one mere episode away from our mailbag episode, and we are going to jump into that with both feet.
That's a really good point. And so this episode drops on the 27th of January, which means if you're listening to this episode, you have 3 more days to get a question in for our mailbag episode. So send us a question, questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. That's how you'll email us. You can send us a message through Facebook. Just, search for One Nation Under Whiskey. You can even search for Single Cast Nation and ask us a question there. We'll tend to questions there as well. You can always tweet at us @One Nation Whiskey, and then you can send us questions via Instagram, like a few people do, and we are @One Nation Under Whiskey. And as always, Jason, is there an E in whiskey?
Never, Joshua. Never.
Never ever.
I will say there is an E in February, and in an earlier episode, we gave the wrong date for the dropping of the mailbag episode.
Gosh.
And so just to clarify, it will be dropping on February 10, which is my eldest's birthday. He will be 1 year away from getting his driver's permit, which he talks about every single day. And then I am equally excited to say we will be kicking off season 5 on February 24. And we have already conducted the interview with somebody we've been trying to get on the podcast for all 4 seasons. And the stars finally aligned. We finally got them sat down and we got them on wax. And so February 20, I'm clearly not going to reveal who it is, but on February 24, we will kick off the 5th season of One Nation Under Whiskey with somebody that we were very, very happy to be talking with.
Oh my gosh. Before you said that I was a bit too relaxed, maybe a bit too calm. And now just thinking about who this person is and the fact that I feel as if we could easily spend another 4 to 5 hours with this person
easily.
And still not get all of our questions answered. Anyway, I think that is the perfect place to end, to let our listeners go. Jason, to let you go, to let me go. I thank you as always. And you know what? After this, let's grab a little dram.
Should we grab that dram by the clip?
Oh, Dick. Yeah, where's my... here we go. All right.
Before we get out of here, good friend of the podcast, Vadim Parlovsky,
Yes.
reached out to say he now says clip in polite society and has people looking at him like he has grown a second head.
I just feel bad for the people listening to this podcast who didn't listen to the wives episode. Who are like, why are they saying click, and why am I offended? Listen to the wives episode. It was the the Thanksgiving episode, and you'll understand why the term click is coming into play here. Click, Jason.
Dick.